What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Inquisitive Atheists, episode number 1. Today's date is September 23rd, 2013, and I'm one of your hosts, Jason Camerano. And with me today is Garrett Geisler.
What did you say today's date was?
September 21st, 2013.
Okay, it didn't sound like that, but we'll go with it.
All right.
Whatever.
Well, we can play it back and we'll see if I was right or wrong on that one. So this is our first introductory podcast to what we hope to be a at least bi-weekly episodic series. So let's start by just giving a brief explanation on what we do and what's the purpose of the show. So primarily this is going to be for our own educational purposes and to help others. We really want, as our name states, to be very inquisitive. We are going to be asking questions of one another. We're going to be bringing up topics that maybe one of us doesn't have as much experience with, the other one might have more experience with. We're just going to just talk and chat and just learn from one another.
It's not necessarily winging it, but it's more or less a structured guide of here's what we want to know more about, so let's talk about it and learn more as we discuss.
Right. And I can't speak for Garrett on this, but we were talking about this before, but we both actually feel like, we're both fairly new to atheism, relatively speaking.
Relative to our age, we're new to it.
Right. So, we want to, I've done research for the past few years on it. I've been reading a lot of stuff and watching a lot of debates, and it's all, it's all a learning experience, and like every day I'm learning something new, whether it be about atheism or something else. But this is one thing that we want to get together, a place that we can come and chat openly and like have these healthy discussions and debates. We might not agree on a certain topic, but that's going to be one thing that I'm going to really enjoy is when we have discussions and debates. So,
and when we don't agree on topics, I think when it's going to get really interesting, because I feel that if we don't agree, it might be more so because we don't know enough. Like, if there's a situation where we're discussing logical fallacies, and both of us are kind of like wishy-washy on the actual definition of it. So I think that, and we're discussing this now, but I think this is one of the things that is the purpose of the show. We're gonna try to do our research as best as possible before the show so that we don't miseducate our listeners, right? So that is goal number 1, I think, is not to spew false information, because isn't that is the second point, is to make sure people are getting correct information in the information age, I guess, or whatever we are now.
Right. So, and that's the other thing. I guarantee you that there's going to be plenty of times we're going to be talking about something in this podcast that we're going to be either blatantly wrong about or slightly misinformed about. But that's going to be what we are going to be in open forum about. We're going to provide an email address that we're going to be able, that listeners, or even as we'll get into a later discussion about, that we might be having guests on the show, that people can come and discuss, send feedback, send criticism, send information our way of like, what did we get wrong, or what do they want to hear us talk about, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. So I guess I think are going to be common as much as we can keep the conversation interesting.
Right.
And whether they're in-house guests, because this is we're both in the same environment right now, not remote. Whether we do remote guests or whether we have sitting next to guests, roundtable discussions, it could be anything.
Right. And that's the other thing. This being our first show, we're just basically getting into the swing of things. Audio quality might not be quite up to snuff, but we're going to try to work with it, and it's going to get progressively better.
We will purchase.
We'll purchase
is necessary.
Yeah, we're just we got a mic on top of 3 books right here. It's pretty epic looking. So as I was stating earlier, talking with guests, that's one thing that I actually am really looking forward to, and hoping we can do a lot of that, whether they be guests of like-minded...
whether they be atheist guests or theist
guests, yes. And as we'll get into talking about when we start going into more formal introductions about each of us, I know a lot of religious people, and I would... it would be nice. I will ask them if they'd want to come on the show. I'd reckon that it'll be a few episodes, maybe maybe more than a few episodes in before I actually go and ask them, because I'll provide them with audio samples or like sample episodes so they can listen to, so they can see what we discuss, so they can come prepared and they don't feel like they're just walking into the lion's den, going to be just made fun of or anything like that. Because that's not our aim at all. We want to have this to be an open discussion environment. Yes, things can get heated. That's how debates go, but we're not going to be, slinging ad hominems, name calling and whatnot.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get to a point where it's like, I'm storming out of here, screw this show. Nobody wants that, and we would never get another guest if that ever happened.
Right.
But, okay, so I want to move on to what else we're going to have. So every week, or not every week, every show, we're going to try to have multiple static things that will be contained in each individual show. And we didn't have time for research on this one, but I think for future shows we're going to have something like a Bible chapter of the week. And it's like Bible study, but for atheists. So basically, Jason and I will research a chapter or a particularly common verse, whatever we decide to do, and then do our little bullet points on what we want or what we thought about it.
Yeah, like for example, maybe this time we'll pick Genesis, and then we'll both go off and read Genesis between the podcasts. We'll read it. We won't discuss it with one another until we actually get to the podcast, and we'll just start talking about different topics. And I think this will lead to interesting discussions, things that one might have read, one might have missed, and it'd actually be kind of a fun way to approach a Bible study from a different viewpoint. And considering I haven't read the entire Bible, I've read much of it, but it'd be fun to kind of maybe go through and discuss it.
See, and I, on the other side, I haven't read much of the Bible. I've read snippets of, like cliff notes, if you will, of parts of the Bible. And I'm just interested in what versions of the Bible are we going to choose? I mean, are we both going to choose the same one, or are we going to go like whatever Old Testament versions that were translated?
I guess that's a good point. Like I haven't actually thought about that. Yeah, there are all the different versions. I mean, we can maybe say which ones we're going to pick, but maybe we can just see each one of us read one, and then we come to the table and say which version we read, just so that we can see how these different versions can be interpreted.
Right, they could skew our viewpoint on our opinion on the matter. Okay, so along with Bible chapter of the episode, we're also going to try to get logical fallacy of the episode, and there are dozens of logical fallacies, and I think many people, including myself, don't know exactly how to define or when to use a logical fallacy, or when a logical fallacy has been used.
Yeah, especially in debates, I suffer from the same problems, like when listening to people discuss or talk about certain topics, especially when it comes to religion, but also when it comes to any other type of debate. Knowing whether what type of logical fallacy was just what was just said, and being able to kind of explain or to point out why such phrase, such argument is a logical fallacy. And I think that would really help us out, especially going further and having these discussions with guests and being able to understand, certain things that they might be arguing, and being able to clearly explain why their approach might be flawed, or vice versa, why our approach might be flawed. Because I would say I'm guilty just as much as anyone of applying logical fallacies to arguments from time to time as well.
Right, because religion has been around for thousands of years. A lot of the stuff we're going to be going through has been regurgitated many and many times, and at the same time, the debates have been already discussed. So while we might not be bringing new content to the scene, we're going to come from the perspective of an not uneducated, but unprofessional debater in that sense. So we're not going to be, Richard Dawkins getting up on the podium and knowing exactly.
Yeah, we don't have the fancy British accent. Those always make you sound much, much smarter. But
so I think that's just that'll help, and to keep the podcast rolling with new stuff. So let's talk about why we're here, who we are.
So our structure of our podcast, the next thing we want to talk about is current events and news. So the current event that we're going to start off today is, we started a podcast. That's pretty current. So I want this to be kind of a more formal introduction for each of us. We have a list of bullet points here on our monitors explaining what we're going to be talking about right now. Basically, it's going to be a who are we? And so, I don't know, do you want to kick this off?
Yeah, I'll go first. My story is generic. Nothing too crazy about my upbringing. I was born in Illinois, and I moved to California when I was 5, and grew up in Yorba Linda, Southern California, where Richard Nixon was born, if anyone cares. But
I did not know that.
When I was, it's where he was buried too. So
is his library here?
Yeah, his library is in Yorba Linda.
Okay.
So growing up, religion was certainly a part of my life, but it wasn't fundamental. My parents are not fundamentalists, and while I did go to church weekly growing up,
what denomination?
Lutheranism. So
like that guy in Superman, right?
Which part?
Lex Luthor?
Oh, yeah. Just like that guy.
Yeah, just like that guy.
So, that's the... There's Wisconsin Synod, and then there's Missouri Synod. And one of them's more rigid and than the other. And my parents were the less rigid one. Like, one of them, the women aren't able to preach or speak
church,
about it.
yeah.
So, and we were the ones, my parents were less strict on that side. So,
okay.
while going weekly, I don't remember how we found the particular church we eventually went to, but it was in a different city, so we had to drive about 15 minutes to the church. I mean, that's not crazy, but you want to go to the church that is your denomination and your Synod. You wouldn't go to Wisconsin Synod if you're Missouri Synod unless you had absolutely no other option.
So you're saying Missouri Synod and Wisconsin Synod, like, is that what
it's
was that?
It's the flavor almost. They each have their own bylaws, basically.
Is that kind of where is saying these state names as part of the Synod? Is this their origination? Is that where they kind of maybe they separated at one point and then kind of grew from those states, or do you not
Probably, but I don't know enough to be articulate about exactly the formation of those.
Now with these churches, so these I'm assuming that they were Sunday services,
Yes,
right?
yes.
When you went to these services, like, was it an all-day affair? Was it a thing that you just did in the morning?
It was a morning to early afternoon. So, like, I mean, the biggest thing I remember about it is the freaking donuts. I mean, there was never a time that there wouldn't be just boxes of donuts that you could just, the little, like, the puffs, the circle, the sphere donuts that they would just be everywhere. They weren't the holes that had, the hole in the middle like a wheel. It was actually like a sphere, the ones that are just little balls and you just pop in your mouth and you.
Well, like donuts, they're donut holes. Yeah. They're what?
Okay, so
I got you.
Though that's if anything sticks out in my mind from my religious days, it was donuts. But
was it an experience for you that when you went, was it a fun experience, or was it a like, oh, it's Sunday morning, I got to go to church experience? Like, how did you feel?
I don't have bad memories of it, okay. But honestly, it was more of a. I don't remember much of normal sermons, so from what I do remember, it was mostly the Sunday school aspect where I was young, so probably less than 10 years old, and you sometimes go off to the other rooms where you're not listening to the normal pastor speak. You're in the children's area.
Oh, really? Okay.
So
you were there with other kids then?
Yeah. So I mean, you're doing arts and crafts and other stuff like that, and different places do different age groups. Like you'll have the toddlers, you'll have infants usually stay with their parents in the actual the sermon, but the sixth graders, middle schoolers, high schoolers. I mean, high schoolers probably stay in the sermon as well. So I was almost to where I would stay in the sermon, but by the time I was out of the church, by the time my parents had stopped going there, and that was mostly because it closed down. From what I recall, the pastor got a different job somewhere else back east.
So the actual church closed down?
So the church just stopped working. Wow. It just went away.
That's kind of crazy.
Because it went away, we stopped going. We didn't have a church to go to anymore, and either it was too difficult to find a church with our that my parents wanted, or there wasn't one close enough. So we stopped going, and I was not confirmed, I think is the word.
Confirmed, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't go through the classes like that, and I did not get the second, confirmed word you get with baptized twice or something. It's like the second
I think it's different for different religions. I'm not exactly sure on that either, but I know there's different ways of the confirmation process, whether it be for Catholicism or Baptist church, where I just think it's a baptismal that is required in order for you to be confirmed into the church of a Baptist church.
Right. Okay. So I've taken up a lot of time for me, but
no, let's keep going.
Religion in the family was.
Take up as much time as you want because I got a long story to tell. So just keep going. This is interesting.
Okay, so after the church was, I guess, closed, religion just fell out. It's not that my parents lost their faith, because my parents met in church. They were brought up
in Chicago,
in Illinois. Yeah, suburbs of Chicago,
right,
so like Arlington Heights or Des Plaines. But they met in church, so church was a major part of their lives. It was integral to my existence. I'm only here because of church, because they met in church.
Right.
So after closed down, we don't go to church. I don't go to church. So at that point, it's pretty much self-discovery. I'm probably I'm probably early teens, maybe like 11.
Okay.
So not even a teenager at that point. So it was floating. Like, if I wanted to learn about religion, I either had to ask my parents, and I didn't, because honestly I didn't care. It wasn't so important to me at the time. But there were a lot of struggles at times going into high school, and the fact that you have questions, because your friends are religious. One of my best friends in growing up was Mormon, mm-hmm. and I think for those that may not know, if you're coming from a different country listening to this, Mormonism is very strict. They have can't have caffeine on Sunday.
You can't have caffeine, period. But the caffeine,
right.
I think the caffeine rules have changed.
Well, okay. Well,
but at that time, it was caffeine was
still. You can't like work. The Sabbath and that kind of stuff. So I mean, the stuff that was in the Old Testament that was written, they are okay with some of that stuff. Women are a lesser human in Mormonism. So,
yeah, in certain sects, there's the fundamental Mormon groups that are like really strict to certain ones, and then there's like they didn't allow African Americans to be part of. I don't know if there was to be part of the church or actually be able to speak in the church, to be the pastors or the what do they call them, the ones who lead the wards. But in any case, it wasn't until I believe the 60s or 70s until they finally changed those laws around.
Okay. Well, anyway, my friend was a Mormon, and that weighed on me because I wasn't confident in my religion as well. So eventually, we weren't friends anymore. Not because of religion, but because we went our separate paths in life. Met different people. But so going up through high school, it was what is my religion? And so I have to kind of reconcile with myself in the fact that it was never confirmed, and I didn't know what I believed necessarily. I do remember that I would stay there. I was very straight edge during high school. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I did nothing. Mm-hmm. So, and all the way up till the end of college years, I didn't have a drink of beer, or alcohol. So maybe not end of college years, in college, but so my life was consumed by band and work and stuff like that. That just were general high school things that a busy person did, and religion was one of them. I had girlfriends that were religious, and so religion, whether or not I wanted it to, came into my life, and so it was, what do I believe? And I do remember on many occasions, I don't agree with those sayings, because I've always been more or less a pro-LGBT kind of person, where everyone has their own types of rights and they can do what they want to do so long as it doesn't harm other people. What do I care? Well, growing up, it's hard to reconcile that. It's well, the Bible says this, but I disagree with it. And so it eventually was just I'm gonna think what I want to think. And if God is gonna hate me because I have a different opinion than this book that someone supposedly wrote, well, then God's a dick. So I was still a Christian, but I was I'm going to be the best Christian I know how to be, and not hate people.
Yeah, you're going to instill your own sense of morality on your backing, with the back end of a belief in a higher power.
Right. So I didn't read the Bible. It was just kind of a loose. Jesus died for my sins. That's the only reason. Hooray. So I mean that many years, I would say probably all through high school, all through college, that was my kind of stance on religion, is just very loose. I'm Lutheran because my parents were Lutheran, and I believed that there was a higher power in Jesus. And then along came, I guess you could probably say, not internet, because I've been always an internet user. So,
well, you're maybe along came your inquisitive nature.
Yeah, but I think I might want to say along came forums. Along came
communities.
Yes, and so I was exposed to so many more people and differing opinions, because growing up in Orange County, you get everyone's the same. I know I went to Esperanza High School in Anaheim, and there's 95% white people there. And so everyone has the same opinion about everything, basically. So moving out into a sort of community, I didn't become an atheist until I think I either was almost moved out into my own place, or basically only saw my parents when I was home from school or not working.
I guarantee you that we could probably look through our Google chat history from back in the day, where I brought up the conversation to you one time, and it was before you had just recently changed your Facebook, because everything is confirmed when you change it on Facebook. You're not truly in a relationship until it's on Facebook. But he wasn't truly an atheist. Update. Yeah, he wasn't truly an atheist until he changed it on Facebook.
But see, I never put that I was an atheist on Facebook, and I still haven't put that I was an atheist.
I thought you did, because I thought you.
No, I am not an atheist. See, that's one thing that this podcast will do. It's going to out me. My grandparents don't know. My cousins don't know. My aunts and uncles don't know. No one except for my immediate family knows, and it's going to have an effect on how they perceive me, and that sucks. And my grandparents will probably be very distraught over it, and that sucks too. It's why can't I be who I am without affecting you? Why does me being true to myself?
It's hard in that sense, because I can play the theist advocate here, because their child or their grandchild
is going to go to hell
based on their beliefs. So it's just this disconnect now that they have with their family member. It's like, I thought I could be with this person all throughout my mortal life, and with this person all throughout my immortal life, your afterlife, as you will. So, yeah, it's a interesting.
Tough. It's very tough, but from my perspective, we're alive now. Enjoy the time we have together right now. Mm-hmm. After I die, it's the same thing as if before I was alive. There was nothing before, and now there's nothing after. So the way I see it is, this is our life. Make the damn bestest you can with it,
right?
And enjoy the moment you have with the people you cherish. And so the fact that you believe that not you, Jason, but you parents and grandparents and stuff, that they believe something different than me doesn't mean that they have to let that ruin their current life.
Right.
I mean, I get it though.
Yeah.
So today, I guess the final point of the closing of my deconversion is today I'm pseudo-closet atheist in that not many people know, just a select few, and I'm concerned about what the people that will know, like work relationships, not my actual job, because most people in my job are actual atheists, but freelance positions and people I work with and people I interact with to make extra money on the side. If they know I'm an atheist, and I know some of them are a little fundamental about their religion, they're kind of very hardcore in their beliefs, so all of a sudden they're working with an atheist, they're going to look at me, they'll perceive me in a different light.
Right.
So 2013 is, I guess, the year that people are going to know a little bit more about Garrett Geisler.
Yeah, I guess so.
So, Jason!
So, I guess, yeah, do you want to just take a break between these two? We can just cut back in. All right, so we're going to just take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. So now we're going to talk about more introduction about me, Jason. So let's. I'm going to start with the first bullet point here of where I was born. I was born in Simi Valley, California. I lived there for about 4 years, and my parents actually got divorced when I was 4 years old, and my mom remarried, and there was joint custody of me between my mom and my dad, but my mom had primary custody. I saw my dad every other weekend. He stayed in the Simi Valley Moore Park area. For those of you wondering, it's just north of Los Angeles. And we moved east, about 2 hours east, to a town called Yucaipa, which probably no one has heard of except for people who know me and who are listening to this podcast. It is a town east of San Bernardino, kind of nestled in the foothills near Redlands. Yucaipa is a pretty small town. They have about 40,000 people or so. So the religion that I was brought up in, this is kind of an interesting topic because I had separate parents. My dad, growing up, was not. He was I wouldn't say fundamental Christian, but he was Christian.
Your
actually,
biological dad?
My biological dad, yeah. He was fairly religious. Like, as the story progresses, you'll see as his religion progresses as well. I used to go to Catholic Mass. I wouldn't say every other Sunday when I went to see him. I would say maybe once a month, maybe once every other month or something like that. When I'd go out to see him, we'd go to Catholic Mass.
How old were you?
During this time, I was anywhere from like 6 to like 13, 14. Like, it would be going on around those ages. That was about the ages that we were going. And Like I asked you earlier, it was one of those things that was just like, oh, great, I'm having to go to church. Oh, I just have to get all dressed up and you go to this place that I don't understand what anyone's talking about, and just it was boring to me. I didn't listen. I didn't follow along.
Did you not have friends?
No, not at my dad's house because I only went there every other weekend, and it was only there to see him. I had a stepsister. I still have. I have a stepsister that lives there who's 1 year older than I am. So, that's kind of where my.
So when you were at your dad's house, you were, indoctrinated is the word, but you were kind of like, you're going to church.
Yeah, for the most part, it's like you're going to church, and it was we'd sit there. Yeah, it wasn't really. There wasn't much of a topic of conversation that came out of it. Like afterwards, sometimes he would ask, like, "What do you think?" Blah 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 blah.
You wouldn't be separated. You'd sit next to him during the sermon.
The entire thing. There was never any type of separation. I'd always be doing. I would be sitting there.
There's never arts and crafts for you or anything.
No, because it wasn't like a regular thing that I would do. It was like once a month.
Like draw Jesus how you think he looks.
Yeah, no.
Because they do that.
Yeah, no, I never had any type of like going off to do this other type activity thing. It was just we'd go and we'd listen to the hour and a half long sermon, do the stand-up, sit-down routine, peace be with you. I never went up to do the communal wafers and the blood of Christ and the body of Christ type thing. I usually always sat down. Didn't really do that.
So I'm assuming your dad did.
You know what? I don't remember if he did. I don't remember him getting up. Maybe he did. So my dad also remarried. So there's my dad and my stepmom and my stepsister. So it was the four of us that went. But yeah, I don't really remember too much because a lot of it I was really bored. It was it was 10 o'clock in the morning as a kid, and even as an adult, it's still early in the morning. Sometimes on a Sunday, you're like, 10 o'clock. I would just kind of sit there, zone out, flip through the hymns and flip through the Bible, see how many pages are in this version of the Bible. Count, kids in numbers. It was always a thing like how long is this book? Wow, this book's like 1,000 pages. That's pretty crazy. Why are these pages so thin? Why is this book like this? Why don't I understand some of these words in here? So that's the religion part, like as a brief overview of like on my dad's side, and I'll kind of get a little.
Well, that's
bit
you
more
up till about like
13,
early teenager years.
Early teenagers, but now we'll like cycle back to living with my mom, who remarried to my stepdad, and I have a biological half sister there. Religion was not really even a thing in that family. We would never go to church. There was never any of this. No one really talked about religion. There was never really any discussion about it, which was good, fine by me. Like like anything that I wanted to know, I could go and find out about myself rather than being kind of told what to do or told to go do these different things. It was just kind of more of an open type environment, which I am grateful for in the fact that that is kind of what led me to where I am today, with some interesting twists and turns along the way. So, through my teenage years, I was never really thinking of religion much. Like I said, I would go to the church in the early teen years with my dad, go to the Catholic church, but never really thought much about it. It wasn't in my mind much. It was never really part of my life. That was until, I had just graduated from high school. It had been about maybe 2 years after I graduated, so I might have been like 20 years old or getting close to 21. I think I was getting close to 21. And I started to go to this church in Yucaipa called Cal Baptist because a lot of my friends had been going there. So
why? Because your friends were just like, you should come join us at church?
The friends were just asking if I wanted to join. And one thing that church does that, which most churches do really well, is they instill this sense of community. Like you had this sense of community when you started to be on the internet and the internet forums, but that's one sense of community. But the sense of community that churches can bring a lot of people is a sense of physical community, the people actually being there. You interact
absolutely
with
that
people.
Other people care that you're here sharing this experience with them.
Yeah, and it's funny. I would use the word care sometimes with air quotes around this because it's you're there because you're one of them type thing. It's a weird feeling sometimes, especially when you're just joining a church.
Well, it's groupthink.
Yeah, it is kinda. Yeah, group accept basically.
You're right, because it's not much.
Yeah.
Good,
So
good.
it's really weird. I don't know how many people out there have experienced this, but joining a church when you haven't really been a part of a church to begin with, you are kind of an outcast in a way. Like no one, like especially when you're joining with a group of people that you know some of them, but you don't know everybody, so you're just kind of getting to know them. And
really quick before,
yeah,
'cause I want you to circle back on that. But when you are going into the church, when you're starting going to Cal Baptist Church, what are you going in as? Are you, do you picture yourself as a Catholic?
No. Well, here's the funny thing. I was thinking about this while you were talking about internet and labeling yourself as an atheist. Back in the day, there's this website that existed called MySpace, and it.
Nobody's ever heard of that.
I don't think anyone's heard of that one. But anyway,
you could play music on that one, right?
I think so. You could market your music. I hear it was good for indie bands. But you could. I had an account there, and I think I still have the account there. But I labeled myself as a Christian.
Okay, I absolutely would have as well.
I had labeled myself as that when it got to the little topic of, you go through the things, where were you born, and then, where do you live, yada, 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 and you hit the religion one, and you could leave it unanswered, but then you could cycle through the things, and I'd seen the word, I think I saw the word in there, atheist, and I didn't, you don't really know what that means sometimes as a kid, because it's not...
I had no idea. I think I lumped it in with anarchist. And I think a lot of people do that, even nowadays. Mm-hmm. So, absolutely, when I would see, I don't even remember seeing atheists. Like, it would probably, I'd browse over it immediately because, why would anyone ever click that?
Yeah, it might be, it might have been under other, they wouldn't actually have the word atheist in there. It would just be, Christian, Mormon, Catholic, Buddhist, Hindu, other.
Right.
And so you just put other. And actually, coming to think about it, I think that might have been what it was on there. So anyway, I labeled myself as a Christian then. What I actually went to Cal Baptist for, I actually wasn't going to the Sunday services. I was actually going to a college group, and that's where my friends were going. Because it's more of it brings you in a lot
So you were
easier.
going to, CBU, California Baptist University?
I don't know if that's the organization that this one falls under.
Okay.
It's just the church in Yucaipa is called Cal Baptist. And,
okay.
But it was a college group, and there were a lot of my friends that went there, and that was one thing that was very appealing to me. It's like, I can hang out with my friends, and we'd all go to Denny's and stuff like that afterwards, and it'd just be this group of people, and you have the sense of community. They'd invite you to go do different things. And
so it sounds like it was almost less about religion and more about.
There was,
friends.
In terms, for me, it was less about religion at first and more about friends. And, I'd start listening. At this point, I was starting to listen a little more to what these people were saying.
Right, and that's how they get you in there. I mean, they get you in there for the community aspect, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. And then you're there. You're almost stuck.
Yeah, they're now they can talk to you. Now they can talk to you in a room where other people follow their same views. And it is very... I've never once been in one of these college groups where I've actually asked a question. I felt insecure to even ask a question. I'd have to ask somebody. I would ask somebody in private. I wouldn't.
Well,
ask
you certainly couldn't ask. Who would ever think of asking a question during a sermon? I mean, it's just unheard of. I don't think I've ever seen it.
But even in this case, I'm in a room with maybe 30 other people, other college students, and then the youth pastor that's there. It's a little more inviting for questions, but it's not as inviting as a classroom environment where questions are very. That's kind of the environment. It's not like a sermon like you have in a regular church.
So you're going to Cal Baptist.
Going to Cal Baptist, and I'm enjoying it. And you get this correlation between, when things are going well, you start to try to relate it to things that you've recently done, and you try to make this correlation and result in causation. So I was starting to think, all these things are going really well for me. I'm making all these friends. I'm really happy, yada, yada, yada. It must be because of God. It must be because there's this presence that is making me feel good. So I made that correlation, and I made that adjustment. I made to start thinking, well, okay, I'm going to start praying, doing these types of things. So I started going and stuff. And actually, it was the summer of 2000 and I believe it was 2000. So that would be, I was born in 84, that would have been 21. I believe it was summer of 2005. It was my second semester. I was going to be starting my second semester at Fullerton. Well, I met a girl at my friend's house, and we started dating, and we were also going to the same church, like all this stuff. So once again, this is more confirmation to my original.
This is why would you not be religious?
Yeah, it's
There's
more,
no reason not to be.
It's another thing that I can. It's another way for me to confirm my original justification for thinking that because these good things were happening is because of a God. Without this is the obvious argument. The correlation does not equal causation. You're looking at these things and why these things are happening. It wasn't because
I'm only making all these friends because I'm going to church. I'm only getting this
Right.
girlfriend because I'm religious.
Right, which is preposterous. So
Right.
as time went on, as I continued dating this girl, we stopped going to Cal Baptist, and we
For
stopped.
one reason or another?
Yeah, I don't really remember the reason. I think it was just just kind of started to stop going and moving on like that. So also I stopped going and I stopped praying and doing all those things. So I started to kind of fall away a little bit because I started becoming really comfortable in the relationship, and things were going well for a while. But then obviously things were starting to not go well. And long story short, the relationship ended, and at this point, I'm feeling down. It was a really long relationship. I think it was like 4 years, close to it. So it was a really.
I met you while you were dating her.
Yeah, you did. And so I was moving on, and at that point, I was like, well, I started to meet another person, and she invited me to go to this church called Trinity, which is down in Redlands. And this is another group, and some of the people that had gone to Cal Baptist are now going to Trinity as well. Like, it's this really popular church group that goes on down in Redlands. And once again, it's now another new person who's not very educated in religion going into a very religious environment. So once again, I had the same feeling of being an outcast. But anyway, I'm meeting this new girl, and things are going well again. I'm starting to
So you're maybe 22, 23?
No, this time I am 26.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, no, 25. I'm 25. 24, 25. It must have been.
How old are you now? We should specify.
Yeah, I am 29 years old right now.
I'm 28.
So, yeah.
29
okay.
next March.
Okay. So, I believe I was 25. Yeah, that makes sense. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Yeah, I was about 25. And so, started to go to this Trinity church with this one girl, and then some of my friends there, and I was making new friends. And once again, I started to make this correlation again. I started to think I remember when I was going to church, all those good things happened before, and then I broke up, and I was really down. And I'm going to church again, and all these good things are happening again. I'm starting to make friends. I'm starting to go out there, and I'm meeting someone again. So this time I was like, you know what, and I remember this vividly. I was at this point, I was actually living back at my parents' house. This is the interim time between living at a rental house and going back and living at my parents' house temporarily until I found a place to live at again. I was living there, and I remember laying on the guest bed one night, and I was like, you know what? I've done this before. I've done this a few times before. Even I'd say even before going to Cal Baptist, there have been times where I've been trying to pray because you hear all these things about prayers working and all these things, so you start trying to pray and you try to do all these things. But I was like, this time I'm really going to do it. I'm really going to invest myself in this. I'm going to pray every night. I'm going to really start to believe. And
But why? What? Do you remember?
why? I remember why is because I made that connection between all these good things happening and it being because I was
things are
going
to
to
get
church.
even better.
Things are going to get even better, or things are going to remain good.
Okay.
So, this is not to say that when I wasn't going to church things weren't good. There were plenty of good, hundreds and hundreds of good things. But the thing is, this is what
lost sight of them.
This is what confirmation bias does. You see the hits, but you neglect to see the misses. So I started to pray every night. Started to do, to go to the Wednesday night. It was another college group. I still was not really going to a Sunday mass. It was just these college groups that I was going to, and I was attending. I was attending also with this girl, and we started to go. And I remember one time we were going on a hike one time, it was I'd gotten off work, and it was like 5 o'clock, and it was in the summer because I know that the sun stayed up late. And I remember walking on this hike, and I was like, oh, I'm like everything feels really good right now. I'm really feeling happy. I was like, dude, this must be God. God has really done all these things for me right now. Has really made me feel good. Like this weather is perfect today. Yada yada yada. Just thinking all these things about
happy thoughts.
These happy thoughts. I remember those things. I remember those. And so, as I moved on, actually, we can kind of double back just one more time. How I mentioned that my family wasn't, my mom's side of the family wasn't religious. My sister converted to Mormonism while in high school, and
but that didn't affect you.
That didn't affect me much, no. What affected me a little bit more, because at this point I was still considering myself a Christian, and then my mom converted to Mormonism as well, and that was a little more. That affected me a little bit more. And you know what? In some ways, her converting to Mormonism is in some way impartial, because you never just say one day you wake up you're like, oh, okay, I don't believe anymore. It's all these little things, all these little chips to the statue that you're it's the statue of Christianity, the statue of religion that you have inside of you, and that you're just making these little chips, asking these little questions until it kind of all comes eventually crumbling down. But it's a gradual process, and this is one of those things, because I started to thinking about Mormonism and trying to figure out why it was wrong. Why was my religion better than theirs, or why was my religion more right than theirs? So there were those little things. I started to do a little more questioning about things, and that kind of led me to be more, questioning about religion and stuff. So anyway, that happens, and then I'm going back to church. And going to the Trinity Church, and all these things are starting to happen. And there's this guy that I was friends with at Fullerton, and I made friends with him on Facebook. And he was he was an atheist. And I remember being back in Fullerton when we had sometimes those crazy preachers or something like that on the campus.
Yeah, all the thou shalt repent with the big posters that take up. Yeah, bigger than the person themselves.
Yeah, he went to go talk with these people all the time. I'd see him talking, but I never stood around and listened. But he was pretty outspoken about his atheism, his lack of belief in deity, and it was just interesting, kind of listening to some of the things he said. But then anyway, I was friends with him on Facebook, and he'd post certain things. I remember one in specific was saying God sacrifices himself to save us. It was just this kind of statement, and it was there were these little posts that he made that start to make me think and start to kind of question things, and it led. And also, aside from going to Trinity, I was also attending a Bible study with about 5 other friends in a house out in Beaumont.
Wow.
I was going with
you were in deep.
I wouldn't say I was in
you weren't proselytizing.
Yeah, I wasn't proselytizing. I was trying to get to that point, in a sense. I was trying to invest my time to do this, but there was still part of me that was a lot of this is great because of the interactions with friends and stuff, and I really enjoyed these Bible studies. It was every Sunday evening we'd go over there, and it was there was guys and girls, and the girls would go in one room, the guys would go in the other room, and they'd have studies with this older couple that owned the house there in Beaumont. The wife would go in the other room with the girls, and the guy would go in the other room with the guys, and they just talk about this stuff. But prior, we would have dinner, and we would just hang out and just talk about what's been going on and whatnot. It was a lot of fun. I really liked everyone there, and I'm actually still friends with most of the people that went there. So, but it was around November or so, October, November of 2011 when I is it 11?
You could have been 11. 10.
2010, yeah. That I started to question a few more things and started to look up stuff. This is when I actually kind of looked up the word atheist and started to kind of understand what it means. And during this whole time, as I stated before, my dad was fairly religious, my biological dad. He became quite a bit more religious, a lot more pushy. I can go back and remember certain things that were just like, he was really, really pushy with the religion, and he was always hell-bent on talking about how everything's going to be coming to an end soon. He was like trying to preach through fear. And there are other
like
things... Apocalyptic stuff. And like, I would always ask questions like, what if someone was a really good person but just didn't believe in God? And he's like, well, they'd still go to hell. And it was just like this one thing that always stuck with me, that I was just like, God, that is just so evil. It's like, how could anything be like that? And so those are things that are always in the back of my mind, thinking about these things that I just found immoral based on my own like views on life. And anyway, I was thinking the other day, my girlfriend and I were talking, we just happened to bring up the conversation of like the birds and the bees conversation. Like, how was that with your parents? Like, what did you have with that? And I'll direct this question to you in just a second, but maybe we can get about this a little bit after this. But I remember my mom and my stepdad, I don't know if I really had that conversation in depth with them. I learned a lot through school doing sexual education, and like, just you learn a lot in that aspect. But my dad, I couldn't remember. I was like, we were walking, me and my girlfriend were walking when we were talking about this. I was like, he bought this book on tape. And I remember, I was like, I think the guy's last name is Dobson. And I Google it and I look up, like, I think it was like James Dobson or something. But he's this guy who's this evangelical who does that the family for religion type stuff. And I was trying to find those tapes, and I was trying to like so I can re-listen to them, but they're so bad, and they just like they're like, they talk about masturbation as a sin, yada yada yada, and just all this stuff just to scare you into abstinence rather than
guilt you.
Guilt you into abstinence rather than educating you on on safe sexual safe sex.
That you have these urges.
Yeah.
They're bad. You're bad that you have them.
Yeah, basically. And I kind of remember that. And so anyway, we can go flash forward again, like back to 2010, where I started to looking these things up and start reading more about it. And that's where I actually found the Atheist Experience show, was back in 2010 on YouTube, just little clips about it. And I'd been listening to podcasts, video game podcasts for a while prior to that, but I started to pick up on their podcast and start listening to that, because you have two atheists talking with callers that sometimes are theists, and they have pretty lengthy debates with them. So that was helping me. I started to understand a little more, and I actually told the people who I was attending the Bible study with. One of my friends came over, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be coming anymore." And he said, "Why is that?" And I was like, "Well, I don't really believe anymore." And it was kind of shocked, actually. And so we had a little bit of discussion then, and so he's still going. I don't know if he's still going to that Bible study, but I know he's still really religious. And I started to read more and more throughout 2011, and as we go to 2012, I am last year is just even more research, even more reading. And actually, back in 2011, I remember my dad talking to me on the phone, and he just said to me, he goes, I was talking to him about my job, yada yada yada, and he goes, I'm really proud of you. And I was like, oh, thanks. And I was waiting for this but. I knew there was going to be a but to this sentence. So he goes, but. And then he brings up religion, but he's like, but you're not religious, but you don't have faith. Like talking about that. And I was like, okay.
You're a great son. You've achieved so much in life, but
you don't have Jesus. So I followed along in this conversation to see where this was going. I was going to see what he was going to ask, and he asked me if I wanted to go to Harvest. For those of you who don't know, that's a big religious ceremony that they do every year. I believe at Angel Stadium, but they were doing it this year at both Angel Stadium 1 week and 2 weeks later at Dodger Stadium. And these baseball stadiums hold like 40 to 50,000 people, and where the stages are set, they're like facing facing the home plate kind of area, but it's kind of in the outfield.
Right, facing stands.
So the back area is not filled, but everything else is filled, and it is like it's kind of surreal. I mean, you have like 25, 30,000 people at this place, and it's pretty crazy. And it's like, whoa, this is like kind of, this is weird. It's like I'm at like some sort of like cult rodeo.
But when you went to this, you were already
at this point. I already proclaimed myself to be an atheist. I took notes during this whole thing just to kind of, everything that he was saying. I have the notes around somewhere too. And then we have this like discussion on the way back. Like my dad's like trying to convince me of all these things, and I start bringing up these different things about what I think about why I believe if his God exists, he's immoral, and that how belief in his God does not necessarily require me to worship in him. So for some reason, if he shows himself to me, yes, I'd believe, but doesn't mean I'd worship. And I started to bring up cases of points of like this God's immortality, about Abraham's going to sacrifice his son for God because God told him so.
But it was just a test.
But at the last minute, God said no. And I said, and my dad was saying certain things, and I said, well, let me ask you this. If God told you, if you knew for a fact God showed himself in a vision to you, and he said for you to kill me, would you do it? And he said, yes.
Yikes!
So it was like, at that point, it's like, well, there's no real, like...
I haven't asked that question of anyone, or my parents. I don't want to ask that question.
It was an interesting thing. So it's just like, well, that's crazy. So it's like, if you start kind of going senile, so am I just gonna have to look? Am I gonna have to talk to you behind a glass, double pane glass, bulletproof, window?
Yeah. Am I an infidel?
Yeah. Am I going to have to worry about this as you get older? And so it's like, it was just like this weird thing. I was just like, oh, okay, well that's that. So
that's tough.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. And then so it was 2011 and 2012. The girl that I had met during Trinity thing, we had ended our relationship, not based on religious means, because she was still fairly religious. I was already an atheist at that point. We didn't break up because of that. There were other reasons. And then I met other people, and it was, I never made that association again to like, oh, I need to go back to church in order to feel good, because I realized that I was in charge of my own life. I was in charge of my own happiness. I was the one. I put myself out there. I made myself available for friendship, for relationships. I am the one going out and seeking this, and going out and just, not just sitting around at home doing nothing. I'm actually going out and socializing. And
you are the creator, or the doing nothing. You create whatever you want to do. I mean, if something just doesn't pop up, you have to actively seek it.
There's no like plan. There's no fate, I guess you could say, with life. It's like you make your own. You make your own destiny, I guess, in a sense, because you put yourself out there. You make your life as good or as bad as you want it to be. Not in all cases. I mean, you could get fired from a job.
There's circumstances that are out of your control.
Yeah, there's circumstances that are out of your control, but there's a good majority of the circumstances that are within your control.
You have choices, and the choices you make directly impact how your situation changes.
Right.
But while we're still on you, and before you finish the you segment, the Jason segment, I want to hear about your other side of the family, your sister and your mom, and how they reacted to your out atheism.
They actually acted 100% differently than my dad did. My dad was like, my dad would probably still want to talk to me about this stuff, and sometimes he still does, but not often. But mom, my sister, there wasn't much. Like I kind of told them, and they know. It was not really like I just sat them down and told them. It was just they kind of realized, and I actually remember when they kind of realized that was a Christmas in 2010. This was when I was just kind of turning that way. But they still might have thought I was religious because they knew I was going to these Bible studies and stuff like that. It wasn't until December that I stopped going, like mid-December. So I was still going to those Bible studies, even though I was starting to fall away from the religion in November and stuff. my mom had bought me for Christmas a, like, I don't know, 3 foot tall, 2.5 foot tall, like, manger set out of carved wood.
For under the tree, I'm assuming.
Or just for display throughout the year.
Throughout the year.
Yeah. So she had bought me that, and I remember, like, my girlfriend had mentioned that to me before my mom had got it, and I was just like, oh boy, this is gonna be weird.
Like your mom told her, and then
yeah, she had mentioned it to me, like, oh, you know, I kind of know what you're getting. I don't know if you're really gonna like it that much. I was like, oh crap. So it was like on the 23rd or 24th of December that year. I was talking with my sister, and we were talking about her school, because she went to BYU, and we were talking about her school, and I started talking about her science classes, and whether or not in her science classes if they teach evolution and stuff. So we were kind of talking about that, and the conversation kind of went a little bit towards religion, and how, you know, she could kind of tell at that point that I just thought of a lot, you know, that I wasn't in the belief anymore. And anyway, I went it was either the 23rd or 24th, but I went over to my girlfriend's house for, like, the day. This was in the morning that this happened. I went over to her house for the day to hang out before I went back to my parents' house. My sister goes and tells my mom, oh crap, I don't think he's going to like the manger set. So this wasn't on Christmas Day.
Oh crap.
So I think my sister drove out really quickly to Home Depot.
She didn't get anything very quickly on 23rd or 24th.
Well, she must have, because she got into Home Depot that might have been closing at, like, on the like 1 or 2 o'clock, and she picked up a grill from my house, but I didn't actually have a grill yet. And so, she quickly buys that grill, and so that was my big gift, is this grill, rather than this, like, $200 some odd manger set that actually my mom still owns. So it's a funny story when I'm doing a barbecue, and it's like, funny story behind this grill. Yeah, if I was a Christian,
this could have been I would be burning a manger.
Yeah. So that's that's kind of how I came out to the family, and those are how the talks were. And living in my current location in Yucaipa, it's a very religious. It's a conservative town. There's churches on every corner almost. I mean, it's a pretty religious town, and I have interactions with door-to-door evangelicals from time to time.
Yeah, you get a lot more than I do. I'm in Corona in Southern California, and I don't ever answer my door, so that might have some effect.
Yeah. In the little community park that's near where I live, they usually have religious, like, things going on that I walk by when I'm going on my run or my walk or something. I see those. Going down to Redlands to this event called Market Night, there's at least like 3 to 4 booths dedicated specifically to religion. Like, are you going to hell? Yes or no? And you sit down and you talk with this person. I'm sure that they're probably going to tell you that you are, unless you're believing exactly the same way they believe. And so that's that's a pretty long look at, like, my life in terms of religion and my quote-unquote deconversion, if you will. So
it's curious. Just to have commentary a little bit on it, in that, because I don't think I did a good job of explaining my deconversion so much as my not ever really conversion. It almost seems like your life goes from Christian to, like, within a year you're, like, not Christian anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you obviously had, like you were saying, you were chipping at the faith. Yeah. And then in 2010 it was just kind of like things just start crumbling around you, and it's like, why?
It was a pretty quick month. Like, it was like October, November, December. That was kind of of 2010. That was the collapse of it.
You attribute that to atheist experience, that show?
That's one of the parts. That's because when you start doing your research, if you start going on YouTube and start just typing in things, when you type in the word atheist at that time on YouTube, those are the videos that would come up. What I was trying to look for was debates between theists and atheists, and that's one of the ones that came up, because I wanted to hear both sides. I wanted to hear what theists' claims were, and I wanted to hear what the arguments were that atheists have against said claims. And I didn't know those, and I didn't know certain things. Like, there's a lot of different things that kind of I've watched, like Penn and Teller's show Bullshit, that have stuff about, they have some topics about religion. So I watched those ones. Watching college debates that are on YouTube between this guy who was called Christopher Hitchens and William Lane Craig. I didn't know who these people were at the time, so it was interesting.
You mean they were at
a university doing the debates, and it might have not been. I remember the first time I ever heard Christopher Hitchens was when I was typing in the word atheist into like the App Store or podcast store on iTunes, and I typed in atheist debate. It was some podcast that was having debates with different atheists, and I just clicked on one with Christopher Hitchens on it, and there was a debate between him and some other guy. I can't remember the guy's name. But I didn't know who Christopher Hitchens was at the time. I just listened, and even afterwards, I still didn't go look him up or anything. It was just as I kind of started doing research and kind of watching things and reading articles and reading books and stuff like that, that I started to know about these different people in both movements, whether they be on the atheist front or the theist front.
Yeah, I would. Speaking of Christopher Hitchens, he was instrumental in my deconversion. In that, I felt his lectures and debates spoke to me more so than other debaters, and I'm not necessarily sure why. Other than I felt like his viewpoint really just kind of it was so well constructed and researched, and the things that I had always thought were true, like just information, because he was a huge Mother Teresa, anti-Mother Teresa guy. He did not like her, and so it's stuff like that that you don't know about the stuff that doesn't get put on the government, not necessarily controlled, but the media. The media wants you to only know certain things, so they don't put other stuff out there.
Which is funny because it works both ways in the media aspect. Yeah, there's the liberal left and the radical right in terms of media coverage on certain events.
Absolutely. They'll make you think one thing that is, sensationalist titles. It's all about that, and the article won't offer anything other than hearsay. So I think that YouTube, in that case, again, communities. I'm not sure if YouTube is really the greatest community that you could, comments. Comments don't help you much on YouTube, but
that's
the videos, absolutely. Without those, you circle back to 9/11. When
before YouTube,
the fear of terrorism, and we have to band together to fight everyone. And I definitely remember I was religious at that point. I wasn't I wasn't preaching anything. I wasn't going knocking on doors, but I was like, hell yeah, they're bad people over there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fear. Fear is that's the whole God-fearing. I'm a good God-fearing Christian. I've always hated that statement. It's like, well, why should you have to fear the supreme being? I don't understand. It's never rung.
Yeah, I hear that all the time still from religious friends that I have. I see posts and stuff like that about that. So, yeah.
All right, well, I think we can wrap up this segment.
Yeah, so I guess we can just take another break here, and we'll come back with our final segment, which is talking about religion and atheism throughout our day. So, all right, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. So we are going to our last topic that we're going to talk about today is religion and atheism throughout our days, and just kind of talk about a few things on what's our day-to-day life and how religion or atheism plays a part in it. We kind of discussed our families, like just to kind of put it out there. I have like my relationship with all my family has been great. I've had those discussions with my dad that get heated in religion, but aside from that, we still see each other on a regular basis, and we still talk. It's
still civil.
Still civil. As long as religion doesn't come up, we're usually pretty good. Even though he pushes a little more on me than my other families. Not my other families. On my mom's side, there's a lot less push on religion.
It's how everyone interprets it. He pushes it on you because he cares, and it's a misguided caring, in my opinion. But
right.
If you look at it from that sense, you can see some ounce of just like compassion.
Right.
But you look at it from an atheist perspective, it's like, stop it.
Right. So let's see, what's some other topics that we can talk about in everyday life. As I stated kind of in the beginning, the town I live in is fairly religious, and I'd say the good majority of my friends are very religious. My day-to-day life includes my girlfriend, who is actually not religious. So
which is crazy. How does that even happen? Cannot find non-religious people out there.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's like we've talked, like this story that I told today about my deconversion. I actually talked to her about that whole process with me, and she's talked with me about her process.
That was probably longer than the 40 minutes that you took for this episode too.
It was about the same amount of time, because it's like we're just talking about everything that happened. And actually, to be honest, talking about it on this episode, I actually had it a little more chronologically in order rather than when I was talking with her, because I was going off on all these different things. I was like, oh, but now we got to back up to this because this happened. You remember.
We put your whole 29 years of your life into 45 minutes.
Yeah.
That's difficult.
Yeah. So yeah, she's not religious. So but the thing is, we both like discussing these things, and I really enjoy that about her, that we can have these topics and we can discuss these things, and we can have these like thoughtful discussions, and sometimes just joke around about it too, and that's always been really nice.
And that's important, to be able to be yourself. I think is the biggest. That's kind of the biggest reason that I haven't come out as an out atheist to my extended family. In that, while they do know me as a person, because I visit them this year for a wedding. I went back for a cousin. It's difficult. How do you even bring it up in a conversation? At the I'm gonna look like a bad guy here, but at the actual wedding at the church. So they're doing their whole thing. Everything is. It was a very Catholic wedding. Just by the numbers. Everything it took forever to do, because they had to have the whole. I don't know what you call the Catholic...
The ritual that they go through for the marriage.
And then they have the steward, whatever kid that is like his pupil. He comes and he does the lighting of whatever candles, and he gives him his little robe, and he puts it on his arms, and he drinks, and then everyone drinks, and then everyone has the communion, and then everyone... there's the point where, and I don't do any of that, and I am like the only one not doing any of that, and we're talking probably, 70 people. My family didn't do communion because they're not Catholic, and actually, so yeah, we're not everyone that wasn't Catholic, which is about maybe a quarter of my father's family is not Catholic, because it was my cousin's, my father's cousin's side, so most of them are Lutheran or Baptist, I think. Right. So when I am not doing the stuff, the emotions. So if anyone was paying attention, which probably they weren't, but if somebody was, they would notice I'm not raising my hand, doing the. There's this one thing where
peace be with you and also with you.
Well, right, but it's everyone. Please put out your hand as if you're putting your hand on that person's head. You're guiding them. You're giving them your blessings. And I didn't do that because I was like, I'm here. You have I flew from California to give you my blessing. Not my blessing. My good wishes.
Yeah.
Isn't that enough? You want me to have this symbolic message of God that I'm blessing your marriage? No, I'm here for you. I'm spending money to be here for you. So I didn't do that. So possibly somebody could notice that I wasn't. But this episode is more or less a coming of atheists to the family.
Yeah, I attended a wedding this year of a friend, which was at a Catholic church too. And I stood up and sat down during the different things, but I didn't kneel and pray. But like when everyone stood, I stood and did those.
Well, I did that. I stood. Yeah, I mean, you can't go against the grain too much.
Yeah, there's a certain level that you can go with, and then during the part when everyone had to do the peace be with you, or when you started shaking hands with the people around you as they normally do. I shook people's hands, and then they said peace be with you. I'm like, I just kind of nodded and smiled and stuff. I didn't really say anything back because number one, I didn't really know anybody at this wedding. I just kind of attended because it was a buddy of mine. So yeah, I didn't go up to the communion or anything like that.
Well, so weddings are a big part of our, human lives, I guess you could say, in that they're happening very frequently, and most are centered around religion. The man and wife the marriage is a sacred and holy
matrimony.
Yes, partnership between. They would never call it a partnership because it's man and wife.
Yeah, it's a union.
Right.
Union under God.
Exactly.
Trinity, God and you and your wife.
So aside from that, though, in Corona, there are fair share of churches. You just go down any Norco, just literally a stone's throw from my house is Norco. You can go down one street and literally everywhere you turn, there's a church. So I don't know about attendance, how popular they are, but they're still there. I would assume they're reasonably well attended because as liberal as California is, Southern California, especially nearer to...
The OC is very conservative, actually.
Right, very, very. But California as a whole is more liberal, like
right.
if you include northern and...
Yeah, you got your major metropolitan areas like Los Angeles and San Francisco and San Diego, which you're going to find more of a more socially liberal population of people.
Right.
But you get to the outskirts or different smaller towns, it's gonna be just like it is in pretty much every state. You're gonna get your more socially conservative folk out there.
Right. But today, I would say that I mostly encounter religion online because it's not that I steer clear of it in everyday life, but I generally it's just sometimes it doesn't come up, and if it does come up, I'm frequently I diffuse it. I don't know why. I don't know. I don't try to press the question, and I guess that could be seen as not trying to be...
well, it's a little different online because when you're trying to press the question, you're pressing the question against a silent wall.
Yeah.
You don't have someone to interact with in the most...
You're not offending somebody, which I hate that there is so much, offense that people can take. If I offend somebody, well, I'm in the wrong then. How dare I offend I have a different opinion than them. Therefore, I shouldn't, I shouldn't hurt them because I have a different.
Well, they say you shouldn't express your opinion.
Right.
It's offensive. Yeah, offense is an interesting thing. It's all depending on how you kind of sometimes carry yourself in some of these discussions, because a lot of these discussions sometimes will get heated because this is like a worldview that you're trying to.
It's not it's a worldview, but it's also a life view. People have believed this their entire lives, and you're like shouting in their face, "You're wrong."
Mm-hmm.
And some people don't like that.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't like that.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, all the people that have come door to door for me at my house have actually all been pretty good to talk to. They haven't been very like defensive when it comes to it. Especially, to be honest, the Mormons have been the most interesting to talk to because they do ask a lot of questions, and they most often than not, when they come and they knock on a door of someone who's a non-believer, I'm taking this anecdotally, I'm not sure if this is actually the case, but it seems like more often than not, if they come to someone's house who either doesn't believe in their faith or is of a different faith, they might just kind of close the door on them and not talk and not have this discussion. I'd say it's more likely that someone of another faith would have that discussion with them. Like, let's say a Mormon's knocked on the door of a Catholic, maybe they would have a debate. But it's kind of interesting when you listen to a Catholic and a Mormon debate, they start arguing, they start using these different logical tactics, but then they disregard it when they try and making their own claims. So it's interesting when they come to a door of a non-believer who will actually have a discussion with them, and that's what I try to do. It's like they've come to my door, and I tell them first exactly what I am, what I believe in, and I let them kind of carry the conversation at that point. They kind of start to steer it. They start to, because either they can just say, "Oh, thanks for your time," and walk away, or they can ask the question, the door opening question, "Oh, so why do you not believe?" or whatever, and that's kind of a way that I will then open myself up and explain to them.
And you have had good experiences with that.
Yep.
It's surprising. I don't even know how I would approach that. Like, because I've had door to door, and typically I'm just like, "No, I'm not interested in hearing anything you have to say."
Well, I stop them before they start going on their preachy ramblings at first, because I know that that's just going to be it's going to be talk. It's not going to be productive. So I tell them at the very beginning kind of what's up, and then I let them decide where to go from there.
So how do they leave? How does the conversation usually end with like, "So I'm still an atheist"? Is that what you end it, or what are they?
Well, they've actually, not to sound presumptuous or anything, but the past few times each of them have said, whether the last time was a Jehovah's Witness, a group of Jehovah's Witnesses, and the other time was a group of Mormons, and they said, "Wow, we've never spoken to an atheist like you before, who is educated on."
Did they elaborated on that?
They just said, "We've never spoken to one like the Mormon group said that they've talked to atheists before who just say these atheists are atheists because it's easy." That's what they say that's what the atheists say to them when they question why do they not believe. The atheists say, "Well, it's just easy. It's just I don't have to do any of this stuff. I don't have to worry about it." Huh. And so they're just, they're non-believers because they don't see a need for it, so they don't believe, and they don't actually educate themselves on religion. It's kind of like
I can't imagine they would call themselves atheists. I think if you're an atheist because it's easy, I can't imagine you would call yourself an atheist. Like I believe the Mormons in this case are probably labeling them as atheists, whereas they might just be.
Yeah, that could be the case. They might be labeling.
It's personally possible. It's just I don't know, somebody that uses the term atheist, I feel has to have done some amount of research to use it. Because it's a loaded word. It has
it has a negative connotation in today's society. Atheist, so you're an atheist. It's like
right, exactly. Because so many people. You look up the definitions of the word atheist, and depending on what website you look up, some will say without belief in a God, and some will say does not believe a God exists. And so those are two very different statements.
Yeah.
So saying a God doesn't exist is different than saying you don't believe in a God.
Right.
So because the second part, the second definition there, where you don't believe in a God, leaves the option that there could be a God. You just don't think there is one, or there has not been enough sufficient evidence to make you believe there is one.
Yeah, it's the difference between agnosticism and atheism. They're two mutually exclusive stances on the same on the topic.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Oh, they're not. Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. So you have atheism and theism, which is just the answer to the question of the existence of a deity. Atheism is the lack of belief, and theism is the belief in it. Agnosticism and Gnosticism does not necessarily reflect a belief or non-belief.
It has to do with knowledge.
It has to do with knowledge, and it doesn't necessarily have to do anything with religion. You can have I'm agnostic to the existence of a cat roaming around underneath my house. I don't know. There could be one. I haven't really looked, but it's like I'm agnostic to that. I don't know. I don't have any knowledge of it. Or the classic example of the teapot orbiting Saturn's rings. I'm agnostic to the fact of that. I don't have any knowledge of it, but I don't believe that's true. So I'm a teapotist, and I don't believe that there's a God, so I'm atheist. I am not a theist. It's like you have in the court of law the guilty and non-guilty. You have a stance and you have the counter stance. It's not guilty and innocent. You're guilty and not guilty. Because if you have guilty and innocent, now you have two positive claims that you're having to prove.
Exactly. And so you can't be. There's nothing in between atheism or theism. You are an atheist or you're a theist. There is no middle ground.
Yeah, there is nothing. It's one or the other. If you just think, well, maybe you're going back to a knowledge claim. You're not going back to a belief.
Right.
You either believe or you don't believe. It's as simple as that. There's no I maybe believe. It's I believe or I don't.
Right. So yeah, you can be a Gnostic, that's GN, atheist, or you don't know if there's a God.
That one. Gnostic.
Agnostic. Sorry. Or you could be a Gnostic, which is the GN. Sorry, and you know there is a God, and we'll probably debate that some other episode on actually how anyone can know there's a God. Or no, there isn't a God, rather, if they're a Gnostic atheist.
Yeah, you can know for certain facts. Like you can there's certain claims that people like they create or they don't create. They define their gods in certain ways that you can have a justification for believing and knowing that God does not exist. Like the God that interferes with the world based on like prayer and all that stuff, I can pretty much knowingly say that God does not exist because there's absolutely no proof for that, and the counter examples seem to prove otherwise. Therefore, you can have this positive claim of this interfering supernatural deity not existing.
Okay.
So I guess
closing
we can
remarks.
Close this out. It's been quite a long podcast. So let's finish up some things here. We set up an email address. This might or might not become the permanent email address, but send feedback, thoughts, criticisms, anything you want to send to the Inquisitive Atheists at gmail.com. It's exactly as the title of the podcast is. The Inquisitive Atheists at gmail.com.
Yeah, so seriously, send any thoughts, even if you hate us. We want hate mail. Go for it.
Yeah, just keep the if you disagree or you don't like us, at least keep it critical and not just name calling and those things. We'll just we won't respond to any of those, but if you come in with a healthy criticism or you want to discuss something or you think we're doing something wrong, we'll be more than happy to respond and talk with that.
Absolutely. Call us out on anything we said that is factually wrong, and if because obviously everything that we're talking about here is kind of just in the moment talking about it, so we could have said something that was absolutely idiotic, and let us know in that case, because we want to improve and we want to make these better and more informative and more factual.
Yep, and we'll probably keep going as we keep going with these. We'll build up our confidence in doing them, and then that'll give us some more confidence to start getting guests on the show, and we can start talking with people. So we're gonna hope that that's gonna be sooner rather than later. Additional ways that you can get a hold of us: I'm on Twitter at JSO2K. That's JASO2 and the letter K.
And I'm on Twitter as well, though less frequently than Jason, at Garrett Geisler.
So yeah, those are the areas that you can get a hold of us, whether by email or by Twitter. And hopefully we'll hear from some of you, and we will look forward to doing more of these. So, all right, well,
thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Take care.